Hi everyone, my name is Terry Lynn Fogarty and I'm a member of the FIP, the International Pharmaceutical Federation Pharmacy Technician Advisory Committee. Welcome to Symposium number 2 of the FIP's presentation series titled Resiliency in the Face of COVID-19, Pharmacy Technicians Rise to the Global Crisis. I'm so pleased that our pharmacy support personnel can showcase their contribution to the global crisis through these symposia. For some background, the first symposia was held a couple of weeks ago and was attended by 236 attendees and represented 27 countries. We heard inspiring perspectives from pharmacy technicians in the UK, Kenya, and Canada. And so today we'll be hearing perspectives from 4 different countries: Singapore, Australia, Denmark, and the US. So now I'm going to take the opportunity just to present an overview of the activities of the Pharmacy Technician Advisory Committee. And then I'll introduce you to our guest speakers who will speak on their perspective on the pharmacy technician, assistant executive pharmaconomist's role in the rapidly shifting healthcare landscape. But let me first begin with an introduction of myself. So I've been a registered pharmacist in South Africa for about 22 years, where I've worked in various sectors, including retail, primary healthcare, and wholesale pharmacy. I've also enjoyed training and assessment of what we refer to as basic and post-basic pharmacy assistants. I have been an ongoing lecturer since 2008 at Nelson Mandela University in Port Elizabeth. I've taken a leadership role in coordinating the pharmacy technician program at NMU. And then more recently, I've been appointed to the task team of the South African Pharmacy Council, have led to my role in setting of the pre-registration examinations for pharmacy support personnel, and I'm also on the accreditation committee for the assessment of programs which lead to the PSP qualification. Then I'm currently completing my PhD. Pharmacy personnel meet scope of practice needs in South Africa. So today's session is hosted by the Advisory Committee for the Pharmacy Technicians and Support Workforce Strategic Platform, and it aims to provide guidance and development of global pharmacy technician workforce led by FIP. FIP established a domain for pharmacy technicians and support workforce in 2011 under the FIP Ed, or Education Development Team. And under recent restructuring at FIP, it has transitioned to a workforce development hub and is a focused strategic platform. The core activity has been to plan and host the FIP Pharmacy Technician Symposium, which started in Amsterdam in 2012 and has since been hosted annually in conjunction with FIP Congress. Important to note is that during the 2016 Global Conference on Pharmacy and Pharmaceutical Sciences Education in Nanjing, the pharmaceutical workforce was defined to include the whole of the pharmacy workforce, including our pharmacy technicians and other pharmacy support workforce. The advisory committee was launched at the FIP Congress in Abu Dhabi in 2019 and is comprised of FIP stakeholders, together with influential external organizations and individuals. They have recently established 4 work streams: guidance and advice for leadership activities associated with global development of the pharmacy support workforce, integrated within the FIP workforce mission. And if you'd like more information about their role and the activities that they are associated with, please visit the FIP website, which you can see on the screen now. If I can just mention a couple of housekeeping items. The webinar is being recorded live and live streamed via Facebook, and the recording will be freely available on the website, www.fip.org. Please ask questions throughout the webinar using the question box provided. And you're also welcome to provide feedback on the webinar at the address on the screen, webinars@fip.org. Then also we encourage you to become a member. The web address is on the screen as well, www.fip.org/membership_registration. And we really encourage you to get individual membership today, if you're not already one. And this will then give you access to the recording of the first symposia from the 9th of November, as well as other valuable seminars, content, and resources. So before I introduce my co-moderator, one of the questions that came up in the previous symposia was this idea of definitions and terminology and who is who. Why do we talk about technicians? Why do we a technician and assistant? Are they different? What is a pharmaconomist? So we thought that as an introduction to the symposia, we should try and just introduce you to some of the terminologies. And I wanted to start by talking about or quoting our FIP President Dominique Jordan in his report. He said that FIP is unique in that it gathers and combines science, practice, and education under one roof, aligning all our activities and projects to deliver the new FIP strategy will ensure we are coordinated from within and from the outside. Our entire profession needs to be united, one fully the Health for All agenda. And so in doing that, there's a need for us to clarify terms used to describe the cadres of pharmacy. We can also be part of the one FIP and as a subgroup also understand ourselves as one grouping. And so one of the projects that we are advisory committee is developing a glossary of terms to bring the pharmacy technician workforce across the globe closer together. And so you can see that we have a couple of definitions up on the screen at the moment. I'm going to start with the definition of a cadre, because often you'll hear people talking about pharmacy support cadre or pharmacy workforce cadre. Well, that is just a group of people that are specially trained for a particular purpose. Mid-level cadre, these are health workers with 2 or 3 years of post-secondary school healthcare training who undertake tasks usually carried out by doctors, pharmacists, nurses, or other health professionals within a particular scope of practice. And then our pharmacy support workforce, well, pharmacy mid-level cadres that assist in the delivery of pharmaceutical services in a variety of practice contexts. And so let's then just look at what different countries call their pharmacy support workforce. And this is a very limited number of countries that we've just selected to present today. So if you see on the screen, in North America, that includes Canada and the USA, our PSP are referred to as pharmacy technicians. In Australia, there are various different references, and each of these will have a varied scope of practice. There's pharmacy technicians, advanced pharmacy technician, and then also a category called pharmacy assistant. In the UK, we have pharmacy assistant and technician, the same for Malawi, and then Denmark is unique in that they refer to their mid-level cadre as a pharmaconomist. In Singapore, we have pharmacy assistant, pharmacy technician, and in addition to that, a pharmacy executive and an advanced pharmacy executive. And then, as mentioned earlier in my biography, in South Africa, we have pharmacist assistants at a basic level, pharmacist assistant at a post-basic level, and pending regulations, we should be able to register pharmacy technicians in the near future. So just to then look at today's symposia, and it's basically designed to address 3 objectives. We're going to start by providing a recap of Symposia 1 regarding the global healthcare pharmacy technician landscape during this time of crisis, of the evolving role of pharmacy technicians on patients during COVID and beyond. And we are going to showcase and illustrate the work of pharmacy technicians as change agents in their practice environments. And I encourage you once again to please post questions in the chat as the presentation progresses, and we will try and address as many of them as possible during the Q&A session. And so now it gives me great pleasure to introduce the facilitator for this presentation, Vijay Sama. Vijay has been a licensed pharmacist in Canada for 18 years. During his tenure, he has explored regional and national leadership roles in large retail chains. He has been a owner and a consultant for pharmacy startups. In his current role as VP Pharmacy Marketing, McCann Health, he brings extensive pharmacy program development, strategy, and to pharmacists, pharmacy technicians, and other health professionals globally. Vijay is excited about his recent appointment to FIP's PTAC as a committee member. Welcome, Vijay.
Thank you so much, Terry Lynn, for that introduction. I just wanted to, for this particular section, I wanted to give you guys, everyone on the phone in this conference, an idea of what happened during the first symposia, which ran very successfully, as you can see. So to start, I just wanted to share an amazing quote from the Chief Executive Officer of FIP, Catherine Dugan. She said, "What COVID has done for us in the profession is to provide us with something that is very unifying. It's global, and none of us, without thought to the political, pharmacies have been the only healthcare providers open everywhere. Where we see GPs closing in the UK, Netherlands, Northern Europe, we've seen pharmacies remain open, providing medicines and other things without an agenda, without a thought to the political capital. It came from the profession's heart. We rolled up our sleeves, and we need to do this." And realistically, what we can see from this point is that obviously many parts of the world have been through several different waves of COVID-19, and pharmacies have adjusted and adapted to each of those waves in accordance. Now, a couple of things to identify here around what's happened since the last symposia is approvals of vaccines all of a sudden come to the forefront, with the Pfizer vaccine being the first one. Clearly, there's challenges with access at pharmacy because of the storage needs of that vaccine. But this is, you can tell even within the last month, there's been so many significant changes in the situation. So pharmacy has to continue to adapt in order to serve its customers. Now, there's essentially four key stakeholders that I just wanted to draw attention to: consumers, healthcare in general, the pharmacy workforce, and pharmacy technicians. If we look at how consumers are behaving during this time, they're really trying to kind of buy essentials. They're going back to the essential products that they need. Obviously, online is a very strong player in this market now. People have gotten accustomed to shopping online and not really necessarily going back to their regular in-person shopping in all markets. There's a shock to loyalty. They've changed where they shop and how they shop. There's a health and caring economy. So this is referring to the fact that people are actually more conscious about their health now and looking to find the places that give them the best value. And last but not least, it's homebody. So many people are working from home, and this is actually changing even the way they access the services they need. So a lot of virtual care services in healthcare are happening. So 60% of consumers actually said when they tried something new during this time, they actually plan to stick to it post-crisis. Now, for pharmacy, what that means is that they really need to be conscious about how they deliver those services and do it in a consistent manner. Just to highlight a few statistics around what's happened during the pandemic in terms of how customers think of the healthcare system. 58 versus 31% of people see doctors as trusted source of information, but have concerns. 31% have concerns about access to them. And so there is still, even though the physicians are they know that they may not have access to them. And so they've actually started accessing other avenues, such as pharmacy, which they've come to depend on now. When we look at the pharmacy workforce specifically, we've responded exceptionally well, as you can tell. With in a survey, 49% of patients felt very comfortable picking up prescriptions at their local pharmacy. And the thing is, during the last 90 days, 47% of them received 90% of them having this at a local pharmacy, and only less than 10% used home delivery. So you can see they're still actually making the effort to go physically into the pharmacies and get their medication. So patient confidence in pharmacy presents an enormous opportunity for pharmacy to support this strained healthcare system. As far as the pharmacy technician is concerned, they're a vital support system to all of the healthcare system at this time, especially with pharmacy being in such a forefront position. They put themselves in harm's way every day, and they've all adapted in so many different ways to actually service their patients and their customers. And we'll have some amazing examples today from the four esteemed speakers we have. So a couple of points here is they've helped to enhance the delivery of measures to prevent disease transmission that we've always been used to. And then there's an economic benefit of leveraging pharmacy technicians that's been proven over time. And this economic benefit is something that you wouldn't imagine, but the cost savings yield between anywhere, and this was a US study, but they yielded between anywhere between $3,600 and $70,000 US annually. So you can imagine technicians provide quite a value to the pharmacies they serve to. Now, when we look at COVID, where do we go from here? Obviously, we're seeing several waves of COVID. This is going to be around for a little while. Even with the vaccines present, we still need to deliver the vaccines across, billions and billions of people. So there's going to be a shift in the speed and magnitude of practice change that happens over this time. And the fact is that the shift in that speed has already happened in a regulatory fashion. Even in the US, you can see that they've announced for emergency measures just a month ago that pharmacy technicians will be allowed to administer childhood vaccines and potentially the COVID-19 vaccines that can be delivered at the regular, stored in the regular fridge once it's made available. So I wanted to leave you with one final quote before we move into the next section. We must be several years of disruption in society and professional practice. Just for myself, I appreciate pharmacy technicians in such a heartfelt way, because I've personally experienced the benefit they've given in the pharmacy that I owned and the pharmacies that I've opened over the last few years. There's no pharmacy workforce that can succeed without pharmacy technicians. They're often the backbone of successful and sustainable delivery of products and care to patients, and there's growing proof of this every single day. So now as we move into the next section, we can move into the exciting part of this presentation with perspectives from four different speakers from a variety of different environments. Now, pharmacy technicians are taking initiatives to improve patient care and services. They're overcoming the barriers to implementation. They're vital importance to engaging the whole pharmacy team, and they're also implementing programs that are going to be sustainable, I guess, post-COVID. It's not just about opening things now and offering services now, but it's about how you're going to do those services after COVID starts to get under control and society starts to go back to normal. So with that, I'm going to move to our first speaker.
To introduce our first speaker, Isnati. Isnati graduated from the Republic Polytechnic in 2007 with a diploma and honors in biomedical science. She started as a pharmacy assistant and completed her certified pharmacy technician course in 2010. Today, she is a pharmacy technician executive who oversees the career progression and development of pharmacy technicians and assistants in Ku Tek Puat Hospital in Singapore. Welcome, Isnati. We're looking forward to hearing your perspective.
Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone. Thank you for this opportunity to let me share my perspective as a pharmacy technician executive in Singapore. So my name is Nati. I work in a hospital, Kutepa Hospital, and it's under Yishun Health. So I'm going to start off by sharing a little bit about the local scene from sunny Singapore. So Singapore is currently not on lockdown. We are going back to some sense of normalcy in our daily lives. But of course, we have some social distancing measures in place. So this is to ensure everyone's safety. So if you look at the pictures, where people queue to go into F&B place or a shopping center, there is a queue. We have to check in. And then when we're queuing, we do stand 1 meter apart from each other. Okay, so now I'm going to share about what this means to the place that I work in. So there are some things that we need to be mindful of because we are practicing safety, and therefore there's actually a need to reduce footfall in pharmacy. Basically, we as much as possible, based for certain criteria of patients, we don't want them to actually come into the physical pharmacy. Okay, so this is to prevent overcrowding, and it's really for patient safety, it's also for staff safety. Okay, so in order to overcome this problem, what we had to do is to kind of change the mindset of how we do counseling, how we supply our medications. So there is a shift from the traditional model of counter dispensing, and we've moved to home delivery or Medibox, which is a locker concept. So later I'll show you some pictures on it. Of course, not all the patients can go through this home delivery or Medibox. There is an inclusion criteria. Right? So we offer this to patients who are relatively stable in their medication regimen. Whether when they come to see the doctors, typically if there's no changes to the medication, no add-ons, no increase in dose, or they don't need to be further counseled on compliance. So these patients can go into these streams. So for these patients, we do the counseling over phone or other platforms. So sometimes we do use video counseling as well. So upon discharge or together with the medications that we supply, inside we include things like a patient information leaflet. So this is to push towards patient education and health literacy. We use pictograms also and some education stickers. So I'll show you some of these photos in the next slide. Okay, so as I mentioned just now, Medibox is a locker concept. If you look at the picture on the left-hand side, so this is situated just outside our outpatient pharmacy. So we prepare the medications, we send an automated message to the handphones, and then so we tell them when the medication is ready for collection. Some of the lockers, it may not be visible in the photo, but some of the lockers are refrigerated. So patients who have insulins, Recomon, no issues there. Okay, so if you're looking at the next photo after that, that's actually the social distancing measure that we have at our reception. So there's certain line markings to guide patients how far apart they should stand. Okay, and then the patient information leaflet that I mentioned as well. So we have photos of the medications that we supply, and then of course the drug name, and then how to take the medication, what the indication is for. And because Singapore is basically a melting pot of multiple nationalities, so we have stickers with drug indications in multiple languages. So we have it in Malay, we have it in Mandarin, as well as Tamil, Bengali. Okay, so another problem that we face, because with COVID, we know that the workload at the A&E emergency pharmacy would increase. And then we have a lot more processes in place. So this is to manage our patient flow. When patients first step into, hold on. Okay, yeah. So when patients first step into the A&E pharmacy, or rather the A&E department, the nurses will triage them according to whatever symptoms they are facing. So from there, they go into different streams. Okay, so there's a lot more processes, and this is really to ensure everyone's safety. And then of course, with personal protection equipment. So this is a necessity, but it's a bit uncomfortable. We all know this. So overall, there's a psychological impact on our staff, which leads to fatigue. Okay, so because the A&E pharmacy is a very small team, we only have 2 shifts, so a morning shift and a night shift. And at each shift, there's only 2 pharmacy technicians on duty. Okay, so because of this small team, we don't want our staff to get fatigued quickly. So what we did was we rotated some of our junior technicians into the pool of A&E pharmacy team. Okay, so actually the side benefit is that this allows the junior PTs to be engaged early on in their career path. Otherwise, this training will actually happen from first year onwards, or rather second year onwards, but this happens pretty early on to help the A&E team. Junior sensing, like different care settings, so they have a taste of where they can sort of specialize in that sense. Okay, so another problem that we faced, okay, so my hospital has this concept of, we call it capsule. It is basically a centralized pharmacy at one of our towers, just outside one of our clinics at level 5. Okay, so this capsule concept is where the patients, after they see the doctors, and the doctors have ordered the medications, the pharmacist actually verifies the medications, and then at the same time, we talk to the patients, we check compliance, we check whether they know how to use the devices, we talk to them about their regimen, dose changes, etc. And because these are our chronic patients, a lot of typically, the list of medications they're on is pretty long. And some of them have polypharmacy issues, so they may have balance of medications at home. So we check with them whether they take a partial supply of medications. So at the same time, we do counseling. Okay, but because right now, the COVID situation, we do not want the patients to actually congregate at this capsule counter outside the clinics, because these patients are from different clinics, different chronic clinics. So we don't want them to kind of gather around. Okay. So we needed to delink this process. So what we did was we moved this concept into each of the chronic clinics. Okay, so in the later slide, I'll show you some of the pictures. But basically, we delink the process of verification. The pharmacist is still taking care of verification, but it's done offsite. So this pharmacist can be situated anywhere in the hospital. They can be in the pharmacy office. They can be in the outpatient pharmacy, in the satellite pharmacies. Okay, and then we train the pharmacy technicians, so we put them up front, so they actually have in this and okay, so the patient interview is done by them, confirmation of the medication supply and the counseling. So the Kader has mentioned earlier, we put our mid to senior PTs in this role. So this also keeps them engaged and gives them a sense of role variety. Otherwise, we don't want them to keep doing dispensing and packing at the outpatient pharmacy. So this gives them a bit of like variety every week. So in the next slide, okay, so this is what I mentioned. So pre-COVID, the one on the left, this is the capsule. This was, so we have a row of pharmacists. We also have our cashiers beside the pharmacy. So after the counseling done by the pharmacist and confirmation of the medication supplied, the patients go to the cashier for payment. Okay, so we couldn't afford to keep everyone in enclosed spaces with each other. So we delink this, and if you look at the photo on the right, that's our technician, and she's currently in one of the clinics. So we put one technician in one clinic. So I'm not going to talk about the challenges. I think that based on the challenges that I observe, it can be categorized into these 4 categories. So one is a health literacy challenge. So because if you're doing counseling via phone or even Zoom, it does require some sort of tech savviness. Even doing an online order, if the patient chooses for home delivery or Medibox, the locker concept, they are required to actually place the order online. Of course, they can call in. So some of our patients do lose out, especially if they're not tech savvy and they're a bit elderly and they live alone, they have no caregivers. It also requires our patients to be cognizant of the medication regimen, so they have to know what type of medications they're taking, how much they have at home, whether there's it might change the next appointment with the doctor. So hopefully they know, they recognize when the supply is running low and they need to activate the next order. And then of course with the COVID situation, island-wide we do have stock restrictions. So this is basically to ensure that the entire Singapore, we kind of ration out the supply so that everybody has sufficient. But of course, this does translate to a hassle. So if certain medications are restricted to only 1 month supply each time, then that means that every month we have to trigger for multiple deliveries. And there's always that danger of patients missing out. So they may think that they collected everything, but actually there's one medication that could be just 1 month supply. We also lose a key touch point because counter dispensing is really this is the traditional method because for a reason we get to talk to the patients, we get to assess the compliance and check on their device technique. And then of course sometimes we know that some of our patients do require non-pharmacological support. So sometimes they do need to just talk to someone who can listen to them. So we've lost this in a sense. The other challenge is of course the mindset. So the earlier slides that I shared, it's not been a 100% smooth journey because we are challenging the traditional roles of a pharmacist versus a pharmacy technician. So there are some small pockets of resistance, and we know that it's because of uncertainty and people are unsure, especially in times like this. But of course, the longer that you do it, it slowly becomes the norm. And then of course, works in progress on a national level. We are trying to marry the learning needs for the technicians. So we do need to set, actually we have set the entry to practice competency standard. It's just that we need to link it together with the skills that we need a technician to have at various cadres, as well as their learning needs, and try to match all this with training opportunities for the. Next slide, please. Okay, so the last one is on perspective. So personally, I feel that it's not all gloom and doom, basically. So as mentioned earlier by moderators, I think that this does present an opportunity, and we know that in times like this, very often adversity is the driver of change and presents opportunities if we are brave enough to take. So I think here it forces us to kind of challenge the status quo. Do we really have to always stick to the traditional model of counter dispensing? Can we not do something different? Especially with technology now enabling us further, it does open up opportunities. So we do need to future-proof ourselves. Today the problem is COVID-19. Tomorrow it could be something else. It could be a global recession. It could be worldwide uncertainty. Some challenge to peace, etc. So we need to future-proof our technicians in terms of the resilience and adaptability. One thing good that I see from our younger technicians is they have a fresh perspective. So because they haven't been in this career for like 10 years, 20 years, so they see things out of the box. And some of them have very good ideas on how to make use of the available technology to see whether we can maintain service delivery to our patients.
Thank you so much, Isnati, for your presentation. I really appreciate the way you've looked at your challenges, but not only looking at what your problems are, you've also provided us with some of the solutions. And I think that is a mindset that we all need to go forward with. So thank you for that. Our next speaker is Laura, and Laura is a senior pharmacy technician for workforce and development at the Alfred Hospital in Melbourne, Victoria. And it's very late there at the moment, so we're very thankful that Laura is able to be with us, and hopefully her colleagues are either watching or at least can access the recording. She trained as a pharmacy technician in the UK from 2005 to 2007 and moved to Australia in 2013. She has experience in accuracy checking, medicines management, and creating and implementing training and credentialing programs. She's passionate about pharmacy technician development. Welcome, Laura. We look forward to hearing from you.
Thank you. Well, it looks like my camera's not behaving anymore, so I will continue on. Before we start, I want to provide a brief overview of technicians in Australia. If we could move to the next slide, please. There are complex relationships that govern hospital pharmacy technicians here. This image, which I have taken from the Society of Hospital Pharmacists of Australia's 2016 white paper, illustrates that. Although I won't go into detail, you can see there are various qualifications that can be utilised to become a technician, and in some instances, no qualification is required at all. Because of these factors, there is a large variation of activities undertaken by pharmacy technicians in Australian hospitals, with some hospitals utilising this work group widely and with greater responsibility than others. Prior to COVID-19, in the hospital where I work, usual practice was for teams to work closely together towards departmental goals. Our clinical technicians could move between operational and clinical areas as their job roles required, and our operational technicians could move between our operational areas freely. Operational areas being our dispensaries and manufacturing areas. Unfortunately, COVID changed all of this. Our second and most recent wave was much worse than our first, and Victoria was one of the worst hit Australian states. As our active case numbers started to increase, the government implemented restrictions regarding social distancing and mandatory personal protective equipment. These restrictions meant that the hospital, including the pharmacy department, had to implement changes in practice so that we were compliant. Not only did we have to change the way we worked, but we also found our workload changed due to the increase in COVID or suspected COVID patients that were admitted to hospital. As you can see, August was the worst month for the state. From a team segregation point of view, this new mandatory social distancing meant that our clinical pharmacy technicians could no longer enter the dispensary areas. We required these staff members to be based solely on the wards that they were servicing. One of these wards was a newly designated COVID ward, and as part of this, a problem was identified. Part of the problem was in relation to inpatient medication supply. All of our inpatients will have an electronic medication record, which will include a medication administration record. This is where medications for their patients are prescribed and then reviewed by pharmacists for clinical suitability prior to being administered to the patient. The medications will either be impressed, which means they are available on the ward, as all of our wards keep stock of some medications, or non-impressed, meaning that a patient-specific supply needs to be ordered from pharmacy by the pharmacist. This became problematic on our COVID ward due to the high level of admissions and turnover. High admissions meant there were more patients than usual requiring newly prescribed medications for the 8 a.m. dosing. Some of these included non-impressed medications or medications unavailable on the ward. For impressed medications, the nurses would usually collect the stock from the medication rooms themselves. But as the patients on this ward were both COVID and suspected COVID, the nurses now had to wear personal protective equipment, including gowns and face shields, all of which was hard to don and doff for the purposes of collecting medications from the impress room. There was also a requirement to reduce foot traffic due to social distancing requirements. These factors meant nurses needed help with medication access. The high turnover of patients meant there was a higher than usual level of medication returns and transfers. When patients transfer wards, we transfer non-impressed medication with them if required. And when patients leave the hospital, we assess any remaining non-impressed medication for recycling and reuse. There were also more patients' own medications that required oversight. Patients' own medications or home medications are brought into hospital on admission. These are not used during the inpatient stay, and they need to be either transferred with the patient if they move wards, or returned to the patient if or when they are discharged home. Enter the designated COVID pharmacy technician. It was decided that there should be a designated COVID clinical support services technician to assist with the increased workload. Next slide, please. This technician had to start at 7 a.m., which was a change in practice. This was to assist with medication access, ensuring that medications were available for 8 a.m. dosing. The duties of the role included locker checking, which includes reviewing the patient's electronic medication records, collecting any ward stock medications so that they were ready and available for the nurses, as well as facilitating the ordering of any non-ward stock medications. In this instance, new admissions were prioritized. For the ordering of, for patients who had been on the ward a little bit longer, the process also included reviewing any patient-specific or non-ward stock medications that were available, ensuring that they matched what was required on the medication administration record, and that they were in date, and that the quantity was sufficient. The technician also removed ceased medications or medications that were for other patients. The technician also managed the patient's own medication, ensuring that they went to the correct location when the patient eventually transferred off the ward and stepped down care. And finally, the technician quarantined contaminated medications and transferred clean medications. Any medications that had been inside the patient's room was considered contaminated, and as such could not be returned to the pharmacy or transferred with the patient to a new ward. Any medication for the patient that had not been inside the patient's room could be transferred to the new ward with the patient if required. We also looked after medication returns. So once the patient left the hospital, any non-ward stock medications that were not contaminated could be assessed for reuse or disposal as per our department and standard operating procedures. The steps we took to implement this new process included building the proposal and deciding what we thought the training should be. In this instance, that included training for nurse education so that they understood the role and how we could help them, training for the technicians on reviewing electronic medication records, training for the technicians on checking patient-specific medications and their suitability being correct generic form, appropriate quantity, in date, etc., not checking clinical appropriateness, training for technicians on checking the electronic medication requests from nurses and electronically declining anything not required. We found that nurses often placed medication requests for items that were already available on the ward, but that the nurses could not locate it. Finally, we provided training for the use of personal protective equipment. We took our proposal to exec for approval and it was approved, and we then rolled the process out. The barriers we encountered as part of this rollout included personal insecurities. Some members of the clinical technician team felt uncomfortable working on an infectious diseases ward in the middle of a pandemic. These feelings were mostly alleviated following conversations, personal protective equipment training, and education. Completing the training and upskilling of the workforce was a time and resources barrier. Ensuring sustainability, including making sure the clinical technician team could also continue to provide a service to the rest of the hospital wards, was another resources barrier. And finally, challenging the status quo within the department whilst implementing a new role proved to be difficult at times. Not everyone responds well to change, and implementing something different quickly meant it took a little while to get everyone on board with how we wanted this process to run. This next slide is feedback from staff involved in this new service, which we'll leave here for a moment for you to read rather than me reading it all out to you. But it's great to note that this process made the role more interesting for our staff, and that the nurse unit manager of the COVID ward requested an ongoing service post-COVID. As we move towards a time that looks more like COVID normal, it is important to reflect on what this could mean for our department and the profession. Due to the pandemic, we were required to train as many of the appropriate staff as possible in the designated COVID technician role. The locker checking aspect of that role was previously on the cards for implementation, but in this instance, that needed to be fast-tracked. And from a future of the profession in Australia, I think it would be great to look at more advanced roles in clinical support, such as medication histories and patient counselling. I think that we've shown over the course of this year that when we want to implement something new, we can do that, and a lot quicker than we maybe usually would.
Thank you so much, Laura. I think many things that you shared with us today are transferable across other hospital systems as well in terms of the roles that pharmacy technicians play. I know that Australia is one of the more advanced markets from a technician standpoint as well, but there's many things on the ward, for example, you did that would ensure that the medications were safely transferred, and the safety of all of those materials that were transferred from one place to another were done effectively. So looks like you worked with the exec teams and some of the other leadership in hospital to make those things happen. So thank you so much for sharing some of the specific actions you took to make that happen. So the next speaker that we have today, I'd like to introduce Brigitte Andersen. Brigitte was educated as a pharmaconomist in 1986 and as a pharmaceutical consultant in 2005. She's always worked at a private pharmacy, only interrupted by a few years in the pharmaceutical industry as a pharmaceutical consultant. She's certified in demonstration of inhalation devices. Brigitte was also a poster presenter at FIPS World Congress of Pharmacy and Pharmaceutical Sciences in Buenos Aires in 2016, called Empathic Listening. She is currently a board member of the Pension Fund for Pharmaconomists, and I'll leave it to you, Brigitte.
Thank you very much, and also thanks because I may share my work at a Danish pharmacy during this COVID-19 period. My English is a little bit dusty, so I hope you will understand what I'm saying. I was a FIP at FIP in 2016 with empathic listening, and I have it here. So I have made my own FIP mood. And it was together with my friend Susan Isaksen. During the time on a Danish pharmacy, we have some in the spring where we couldn't get hand disinfection for the customer and face mask. And that was a very big problem because the Danish government recommend that you have to use hand disinfection. They also made a little sign that you have to keep distant to the customer, to each other, but not enough for all people. So that is still a problem to give the Danish customer. But also in 2 hours, we closed down in almost the most of Denmark with restaurants and cafes and fitness. So no concert. So I hope that I can see Brian Adams in the spring instead. The next one, please. Yeah, I can see that the picture on my presentation is some that the FIP have made, but it's look like almost a Danish pharmacy. You can see there is a plexiglass between the customer and the staff. And I was very surprised how much a customer or we people, when we are talking, are spitting. There was a small spot on the plexiglass. So try to look and you will see it. We also have 4 square meters per customer in our room. So at least 10 people in the room, and it's hard to control. And then we also recommend that the customer pay by credit card and not cash. And then the Danish government had decided that the Danish pharmacy is a part of the Danish healthcare system. So we have to have open all the time and not be closed. So therefore, we also got the flu, and some of my colleagues is also vaccinated for the flu for the older people and the sick people. And now everyone can get the flu. So the next one, please. There have been some changes about the medicine supply. We have a huge problem to get some of the medicine. And therefore the Danish government decides that they want to have some regulation about how many packages the customer might get on the prescription. If it was 100 tablets and they ask, can I get 2? Because it's almost holiday or Christmas time, but they may only get 1 packet if the prescription is on 1 packet. And on a time during the summers, there also were the not prescription medicine, what they could buy without. For example, pain reliever and fungus and product for stop smoking. They only may get 1 packet. But now, and that was before, because the reason that the government did that was to prevent hoarding. And the same was for paracetamol for children. You could get it without a prescription in Denmark, but suddenly for a few months in the summer, they have to get it on a prescription. And that was to prevent higher demand, but it didn't happen. So now you can buy it again. And it is still a little bit concerned about the customer if they can't get their medicine, because we are trying to prevent hoarding, and that is some have the understanding and some don't. But we talk and we help them and try to explain that there have to be medicine for all people and not few people. And then there was the two drugs, azithromycin and hydrochloroquine, because they were these two drugs in a certain time, it was maybe they could use for treatment for COVID-19, and to have to control of it, they decided that it was few doctors who may prescribe it. But now azithromycin is back on so everyone can get it again. The next one, please. Yeah. There is, because there is so much back order, it's a huge problem. We're trying to help the customer as much as we can, to call the doctor or to get a smaller package, or just to make sure that they don't stop to take their medicine. That is the worst thing that can happen. So that is a big challenge. But I have some good colleague who make sure that she is further. That she always look at the computer which packet is it now we can get. Because when we change from one firm to another firm, if the customer want from one company and we suddenly get from another company, is it the same side effect or it look different, and all the concern. And therefore we spend a lot of time to explain it's the same drugs, just from another company. It's the same side effects. It will help you as the other one. And of course, we call the doctor if there is we have to change to the analog. The next one, please. Yeah, we have on Facebook, we have our own site on Facebook for the pharmacy, and where we explain how they can get their medicine. And then we also have our own website where we have the little here, Din Apoteker, where they can order their medicine. Then we can send it by post, or the pharmacy driver can deliver it. And then we also have the opportunity that they can call us and then say, in 1 hour, I will come and pick up. And then we stand outside the pharmacy with their medicine, so they don't have to go inside. So I think we have a lot of solution how the customer can get their medicine without go inside the pharmacy. And then we have, you probably think, how about the payment? And then we have, again, cash or credit card, or in Denmark, we also have some they call mobile pay, where you pay by your phone. Yeah, the next one, please. My working day is a little bit different, and yet not. We still, I don't, but my colleague still give vaccination for the flu. And then we have to remember that to keep our mask on when we go outside with the customer. And then I think the other challenge is to give information and service with intimate problem. It's hard when you have to stand 1 to 2 meters from the customer. That is the biggest challenge for me. but we try to lose it. And we are in Denmark, we have a 3 years education, so we can do a lot of things by ourselves, even call the doctor or talk with the pharmacist, the pharmacy. How do we lose this problem? So we used to be in the front of the pharmacy to lose the problem. So I think that it's I have a normal day, but of course, mask, plexiglass, hand disinfection is a new thing in my day, and it gives me dry hands. So let me see. Yeah, and we get all the information very quick from the Danish government by email. So one time with the paracetamol that I earlier explained for the children, it was during my coffee break. So when I got back, it suddenly was out of the shelf. So it was put down in boxes, so we couldn't sell it without the prescription. So fast it was and still is new rules, but it's working very fine because we have this quick information by email by the Danish government and the Danish healthcare. And we are also a part of the Danish pharmacy is a part of the Danish what do you call healthcare system. So we are in the front. So we get the same information as the doctors get. And the last one, please. Yeah. So I just think that you all have to do in the world that you give the information and the compliance that you used to do, and show how the customer using the devices for inhalation. We also have a site in Denmark where in this time we don't show it because our spitting. So we have a home site, a website where they can see how the customer have to use their devices. And then you have to continue to vaccinate the customer. So as we said in Denmark, the right pill in the right mouth. So this is what I have to tell you about my job in a Danish pharmacy. And if you don't know where Denmark is, I have put a flag here. It's in Europe.
Thank you so much, Brigitte. I can tell how passionate you are about patient care and helping people and trying to find ways to keep them safe and the staff that you have safe as well. I think you shared a lot of very practical examples of what pharmacy techs do on a day-to-day and have had to do differently during COVID to really make sure that people are stay happy and safe and can continue their day-to-day. You know, it's challenging. I think we're going through several waves now, and I think some of these changes that we've made are probably here to stay for some time. So thank you for sharing that with everyone. Really
You're
appreciate
welcome. And I hope you understand my language.
Absolutely. It was all good. It was all good.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank
you so much. So I'd like to introduce our last speaker for the day. It's Mike Johnston. Now, Mike Johnston's a certified pharmacy technician and is the founder and CEO of the National Pharmacy Technician Association, NPTA. Under Mike's strategic vision and leadership, the NPTA has become the world's largest professional membership organization for pharmacy technicians, with over 80,000 members in the United States and from around the world. Mike is the author of 9 best-selling pharmacy technician textbooks and training manuals, as well as the publisher of CPHD Connect magazine. And I'll leave it to you, Mike.
All right, thank you so much. First, I just want to say it's a real honor and pleasure to be joining this panel today. It is quite early here in the US, but it is a great opportunity to speak with technicians from all around the world. So I'm going to briefly discuss some of the barriers and innovations that we have experienced here in the US. You can do the next slide, please. And honestly, they're not unique to the US. I think that's the overlying message and issue here, is that with this pandemic and COVID, we are facing the same issues all across the globe. I think different countries are coming up with unique innovations, and so it's a great opportunity for us to get together and learn from one another, so that way we can determine what the best practices are. But similar to some of the other items that has already been discussed today, we faced significant shortages at the same time as having increased demand in PPE, and the solution that we put together with that to address it was just making some changes in guidelines and procedures. So that included having to reuse some of the PPE and extending their shelf life, if you will. Also, we had major shortages and increased demand in the cleaning and disinfecting supplies. And again, we had to make some change to our standard guidelines and procedures. The main barrier and innovation that I would like to share with you guys today is talking about immunizations or vaccinations. And this is obviously a very timely topic, as we are starting to see some vaccines become approved and starting to roll out for administration. The main barrier here in the US, it's coming from an issue of logistics, in getting it manufactured, getting it delivered to the various states, and then most importantly, the administration of the vaccines. Next slide, please. So in the United States, pharmacy practice is regulated primarily at the state level. So we have 50 different states, and pharmacy practice regulations are determined by individual state boards of pharmacy. So there's a lot of consistency on most standards, but there are differences from state to state. And the federal government focuses more on manufacturing and safety of medications. But they did get involved in the case of vaccines because we have a capacity issue just based on the size of the population we have here in the US. So we have roughly 330 million citizens in the United States, and that's a lot of people to vaccinate. The government set a goal of trying to immunize or vaccinate 300 million citizens. With these initial few vaccines that are coming down the pipeline, most of those are going to require 2 dosages. So that's 600 million vaccines that have to be administered based on those vaccines to get to that number. The federal government has partnered with roughly 35,000 pharmacies across the US. So these are primarily all of our community pharmacies, both chain stores as well as local independent pharmacies. So in those 35,000 pharmacies, you have between 120 to 140,000 pharmacists and about 300,000 pharmacy technicians. Next slide, please. So if we look at these numbers, currently pharmacists are trained and certified to administer vaccines in the US. That's only been around for the last 10 to 15 years, so it's a fairly new advancement here, but it has taken off and become quite popular. But if we're looking at the vaccine needs for COVID and that 600 million goal, so that if you break that down, that comes to every pharmacy needing to administer 17,000 vaccines. Now that's an average. So even if you're talking about the small independent pharmacy, so it's the pharmacy that's the owner is the pharmacist and maybe they have a couple of employees, that's just a running average. So that's not a realistic number for a lot of pharmacies. So if we break that down even further, and we said that we could set a pharmacist up that did nothing but administer vaccines 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, and it only took them 5 minutes per patient. That would be 150 vaccines a day per pharmacy. Those numbers are not realistic though, because the pharmacists in the United States, they still have to review and approve every prescription prior to being dispensed. And obviously we know that pharmacists are not working 12 hours a day with no breaks, no lunch, 7 days a week, and that it's going to take more than 5 minutes to handle the entire vaccination process. So really that number is probably closer to 75 per pharmacy per day per pharmacist. And so if you take that out, you're looking at least a 10-month process to get the population vaccinated. So we have a capacity issue. We do not have enough pharmacists to vaccinate the public for COVID-19. Next slide, please. So the innovation that we are experimenting here in the United States with is allowing pharmacy technicians to begin to administer vaccines. Now, we had already seen this happen in a handful of states over the last several years, and it's gone fairly well. There's been a lot of data and research from it that shows it's been just as safe, if not safer, and just as effective. But now we have a situation where in order to get this done, we've got to train and qualify 250 to 300,000 pharmacy technicians to administer vaccines in the next 30 to 60 days. So what happened is the federal government came in and they issued a new guideline that basically supersedes any state regulations. And they said that pharmacy technicians, if they are qualified, and there are some specific definitions of that that we'll cover here in just a second, will be allowed to administer childhood vaccines and the COVID-19 vaccines. So the great thing about that is it literally triples our capacity of how many personnel we have to access the vaccine process. It also greatly reduced the cost of labor. Pharmacy technicians make significantly less than a licensed pharmacist here in the US. So that is a benefit from a cost perspective. But again, we get to this issue of how do we train that many technicians in such a short period of time. Next slide, please. So the qualification requirements that the federal government here issued, they said that technicians either have to be registered with their state board of pharmacy or they have to be nationally certified. Again, because pharmacy technicians are regulated differently in every state, not every state requires registration or certification. In general, this is not going to be a major barrier with the exception of the state of New York, because New York does not require currently registration or licensure. And there's also a relatively low number of technicians compared to the workforce that have opted to become certified. So since they don't meet those two requirements, there's only the potential of maybe 7,000 or 8,000 technicians in the entire state of New York that would be eligible to do the additional requirements to vaccinate. In addition, they have to complete an accredited training program on vaccine administration, and that training is going to require hands-on training and skill assessments. So the barriers that we're facing with that is just from a cost perspective, again, of training 250 to 300,000 people, and the scalability of that, especially having to do the hands-on training. So we're in a situation where we can't set up seminars or conferences regionally to scale that up. We can't even have regional trainers or city-based trainers that are traveling around to everybody because we have such a short window to get so many people trained. And then the last qualification is that they do have to be trained in CPR or basic life support. And again, there's a scalability issue to that because of having to do the hands-on training for that with the mannequins. I don't know that we have enough mannequins available in the US to get to 250,000 people in the next 4 to 8 weeks. Next slide, please. So what we're doing as an organization is we have approached this challenge and tried to come up with creative solutions on how to develop a high quality training program that is also scalable across the country very rapidly. And so we have developed a qualified training program. And what we are going to do is we're partnering with the pharmacies, since they all have certified immunization pharmacists on staff, to allow their pharmacist to oversee the hands-on training and skill assessments. So now suddenly we have a situation where the technicians are able to do all of their training online and then at work in their own specific pharmacy. There's no travel required. We just have to add some additional training for the pharmacist to let them know what they need to do as a trainer. So this is what we're currently working on. Time will tell how well it goes. We're praying and hoping that it goes well. We are rolling this program out nationwide in the next couple of weeks, and it's certainly going to be the biggest project that we've seen of this scale here, and we'll keep everybody posted to see how it works. With that, I think we can switch over and do some Q&A.
Thank you so much, Mike. I think many parts of the world look to some of the advancements in the U.S., especially in terms of the pharmacy technicians and the scope they have, because they're quite far ahead. And even the training programs that have been developed, as we've discussed in the past, Mike, in the U.S. have been ones that have been adopted by other markets too. So it's nice to see that, so much change has happened in such a short time in terms of allowing scope of text to expand. How exactly that rolls out, obviously you've pointed out a lot of logistics challenges that they may have to face, but you know what, I think considering they've approved that kind of shift of scope, they're probably also willing to make rapid changes in terms of adopting training across all of the people in for example, accessible places like pharmacies to provide the vaccine. There's no way you can hit billions of people unless you have multiple trainers. So thank you so much, Mike.
Yeah.
So I wanted to move quickly into the next section, which is the Q&A. And I know we have a kind of a shorter time for this, but we have some great questions from the field in terms of for the panelists and that we wanted to ask. And then what we'll also do, I encourage anybody who has some questions, any other questions that they haven't posted yet, to please post them and we'll take a look quickly at them. So with that, I'm going to pass it on to Terry Lynn to ask the first question.
Thank you, Vijay. I think I'm going to start with Isnati. Isnati, with the developments through COVID-19, in your opinion, do you think that the pandemic has sped up or slowed down the progression of pharmacy technicians and how they're viewed in your country?
Okay, I think it's really about how we choose to see things, and whether you obstacles and barriers, or whether you want to see opportunities and potential to challenge these boundaries, these traditional boundaries. So I think, in my opinion, it has sped up the progression of PTs because, well, number one is really out of necessity, but I think that's a good thing. It forces you to think beyond status quo, like really what is possible. Why do we do things the way we do? Is this the best way to do things for our patients? Yeah, so it's of course there'll be naturally some resistance, and people are worried. Like, hey, previously this outcome, now someone else is taking over it. So what's important is to have the open communication. And then we try to scope where the technicians can add value to the entire delivery of medication service for our patients, because eventually it is about our patients. That's the end goal here. So we all work together on this.
Thanks, Isnati. Laura, there was a comment about the electronic prescriptions and how this must be an attendee from a country where electronic prescriptions are not the norm. And they were just making a comment about it just seems to work so well. And they were asking about access of that. Obviously, that isn't a question that you could really answer, I think. But what, if anything, will you be continuing into the future?
Yeah, so moving into the future, we are definitely continuing with the locker check process. So as a quick recap, that would be checking any of the non-impressed or non-ward stock medications for our inpatients, ensuring that there is appropriate supply and quantity available for them on the wards. The nurses found that really beneficial. And I think, I guess for other health providers, hospitals predominantly more so than community, it can be really helpful with the team, because say you don't have enough pharmacists to see every patient every day, utilising the technician workforce in that way to support is really helpful for medication access.
Thank you. Thanks, Laura. I'm going to pose the next question to Birgitte. Birgitte, how have the customers responded to the various restrictions that have been imposed?
Yeah, some of them could understand the problem, that it was better that many people could get the medicine that few. And in Denmark, all the prescription is online. So I can see if they had got a package for 2 days ago, 100, then I can see it on my screen. And the doctor have also prescribed that they have to go 2 or 3 months between each new medicine that I can give. But some of them couldn't understand it, and it was the government who have the wrong rules. But we are just people that we have to deliver and explain the government's rules.
Yes, I understand. Thank you, Birgitte. I've got a question for Mike, and then just one last question that I'll address, because we're running short of time now. But Mike, there's a question about how long do you think it would take for the pharmacy technician course and the training modules to be certified in the US?
Sure, yeah. So on the immunization training program, it's going to consist of 6 hours of kind of self-directed training programs that are online. And then they will have to complete 2 hours of hands-on training as well as skill assessment. So it's accredited as a total of 8 hours. But the important thing to point out is technicians can only administer vaccines if they are working on site with a certified immunization pharmacist. So they do have that support structure there.
Thanks. Thank you so much, Mike. So we had a question about the roles and responsibilities of the different cadres of pharmacy support personnel as described by pharmacy law in different countries. And I think that's such a broad question, but such an important one that we're not going to obviously be able to answer in the few minutes that we have available here. But I just wanted to point to everyone that's still listening, and particularly to the person that posed the question, that there was in 2017 a publication that you can access from the FIP website, specifically around pharmacy technicians and their roles and responsibilities, but also just to hold on to the space, because we are planning on future webinars into 2021, and this is one of the topics that certainly will be addressed. I think, as I mentioned earlier, when we really started this webinar, we spoke about the glossary and the fact that that is our latest project. And once we've defined a lot of the terminology, the next step would be looking towards scope of practice and roles and responsibilities, as well as, the different regulatory requirements for pharmacy technicians in different countries, etc. So please refer to the website, look for the publication. It was published in 2017, and that should be a starting point for you in terms of finding out more about the roles and responsibilities of the pharmacy technician. So with that, I just want to say a big thank you to our speakers for their time, for sharing their experiences. We really hope that you've gained some tips and ideas on how to further your patient care in the market, and really just inspired you to introduce your own projects and to communicate with your supervisors in terms of rolling out new projects. Pharmacy technicians are continuing to demonstrate their essential role in the pharmacy workforce, and as they support and elevate the role of pharmacy and serving their communities amidst the pandemic, but also beyond the pandemic. So stay tuned. We will be hosting a third symposium early in the new year. And so you'll be hear more inspiring examples from your colleagues who are making a difference in the lives of their patients in different parts of the globe. Vijay, do you want to say some final words?
I'm just going to say that it's been amazing and inspiring stories from all the presenters we had who committed so much time and energy to putting some slides together and some content together to share with everyone. I think that it's been eye-opening in terms of what's happening around the world and what can be done even with limited resources, even in markets where the pharmacy technicians have not advanced as much. And in places like the US, where we're seeing rapid advancement of where techs are the kind of roles they will play. And I'm hoping a lot of those roles they play will be sustainable into the future, not just because of COVID. And COVID has just been an accelerator of that change. So thank you so much to everyone who's committed that time and energy to share those stories. And thank you to the co-host Terry Lynn for running the presentation so well and sharing some of the FIP goals and FIP work that's been done from the panels and the committees and done in such a great way too. So again, thank you to all the attendees who've attended today. Look out for other sessions that will be happening in the future. This is our second of a series, and we look forward to having you join again. Please tell your colleagues and your pharmacy technician friends and pharmacists that work with you to attend the next one, just so that they can see what's happening around the world as well. And to that, I'm going to say good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night to everyone. And have a safe and happy holiday season for the time that's coming.
Yeah.
Thank
Good
you.
weekend.
Yes.
Bye.